Hello students. I mentioned in a previous video that my daughter created a song based on the title of our book, They Say, I Say, and so we're going to start out today's lecture with
They say, I say, dot, 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 dot!
as I promised. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at one of the essays that I have assigned from this book, Somewhere We Are Human. It's edited by Reina Grande and Sonia Guinyansaka. Whenever I give you guys a scanned portion of a book, I make sure to include the publication page so that you can get all the important information you need for your works cited list. So this was published by HarperCollins in New York in 2023. Copyright was 2022. Date of publication 2023. So we're going with the date of publication because we're talking about the book, not about the copyright of the work. All right, and the story that I had you read today is entitled The Promise Made by Carolina Rivera Escamilla. And this is a story of immigration. And when you respond to it, I want you to come up with an argument that you could make, you could turn into a research project where you would either be making a persuasive argument or a logical argument. The Promise Made is a story about a young woman in El Salvador in the 80s when El Salvador was experiencing a civil war. So right there's one topic you could research. What was the cause of the Civil War? What were the two sides? What was the U.S. involvement in the Civil War? But here on page 11, she says, political and economic forces were strangling me, my family, the whole country. Hey, I'm doing a lecture right now, so you gotta let me.
I haven't seen myself. There you go.
Here's my daughter. Okay, now let me get back to work.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. So, sorry for that cute interlude, but actually I think it's really relevant to today's story because a big part of the story is about the importance of family and how family can be more important to people than fear of consequences or the law. But she says, the bottom of page 11, more than a year and a half had passed since my high school graduation. Political and economic forces were strangling me, my family, the whole country. This is the result of the Civil War. On page 12, she says, when my high school was raided and wrecked, I got more consciously involved in the struggle because students and teachers were taken away and disappeared. But no one could say a public word about it without fear of repercussions. So this is a personal narrative, but she is making an implied argument about the conditions in El Salvador during the Civil War, that it was terrifying and people were disappearing and other people were afraid to talk about it. On page 13, she writes, later that month, my sister and I met a doctor on the stadium running track. She gave me the address of the Costa Rican consulate and encouraged me to request political asylum. So here she's finding a legal route out of El Salvador, and we'll learn that actually later in that same paragraph, she recalls her mother having said, "I would rather that you die among all of us rather than be raped, killed, or disappeared somewhere else. At least here, remember, we found your cousins' bodies to bury." And this just points to the kind of terrible situation and the terrible decisions that were being experienced and that people were having to make, which is the reason why political asylum was so important. So Carolina takes a gamble, applies for asylum, and receives asylum. A little further on page 13, she says, "I had taken a gamble and it paid off. Mama put the telegram down and surprised me when she said, 'It's better, daughter, that you go. Better for you to be safe than to get tortured or killed, tossed aside like a dismembered doll by a death squad. Look what happened to your cousins. I'm relieved your brothers have already gone from here.'" However, her mother does ask her for one condition. She wants her to find her brothers in the United States and live near them. She wants her family to be restored, reunited. And that's the title of the story, The Promise Made. Let's see. I don't know why that scene is not showing what's really on my screen, so you're just going to get me. On page 15, she writes, "On June 18th, 1985, I stepped onto a plane. I did not know whether I could ever return to my family, to my country. During the 4 years I was in Canada, the promise I made Mama hung on my ears like weighty earrings. I applied for a tourist visa to go to the U.S. to visit my brothers." She gets a tourist visa and goes down to the U.S. And she hears the stories of immigration her brothers and others they knew endured, including they'd enter the U.S. hidden inside impossibly small false compartments in trucks or inside trunks or under back seats of cars. They crawled through sewers. They spent nights in mountains or near rivers waiting for the right moment to cross the border. The stories of injustice compounded on their journeys north. So she finds a sense of home in Los Angeles. She finds a neighborhood that's connected to El Salvadoran culture. She eats the food that's familiar to her, and she remembers her promise, the promise made to her mother. At the bottom of page 16, "Yes, Mama, I'll find and stay with my brothers." An echo of her approval bounced off traffic noise, affirming this decision at the intersection of Western and Wilshire. That was the moment I resolved not to return to Canada to start a new life near my family. I let my U.S. tourist visa expire, and just like many undocumented immigrants before me, I bought a fake green card at MacArthur Park. So, what I want you to get from this, well, it's too bad that you can't see the screen, but that's okay, you don't really need to. So, go back to me. what I want you to get from this is, would you argue that it was more important to keep her promise to her mother and sacrifice her own sense of security, having to get a legal green card and live the life of an undocumented worker, or should she have gone back to Canada and found a legal process so that she could have the security and maybe help her brothers to get legal status? Or in a contrary way, what were the conditions in El Salvador caused by, and should the United States have granted asylum to El Salvadorans fleeing the country, even though, as it says in the story, the U.S. wasn't taking asylum applicants from El Salvador because of their position on the war? Yep, so I hope it's a good starter for discussion. And, well, actually, I'm sorry, this is just your written response, but I hope you get some good food for thought. And, yep, please turn your work in. Probably around 300 to 500 word response. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.